Hey everybody, Nick here. I always talk about the fact that I love details. When people get the details right, that's a spectacular thing, and that's one of the things that wins my heart. And that's one of the reasons that I like this knife so damn much. This is the Spyderco Slysz Bowie. I've got some videos already about it, including one where I described the fact that I bought the damn thing twice because I thought I could sell it and be okay with my life, but I wasn't, so I bought it again. But anyways, this is a solid gem. It's a wonderful knife, and I wanted to take a second to talk about some of the details that make me love this so damn much, for those of you who are on the fence about buying a fairly expensive, but kind of plain-looking at first knife. So we're just going to jump into details all over the damn thing and go from there. First on the blade. One of the things I like a lot here is that the top of the blade is rounded off. You can hopefully see this here. This is flat, but this part is actually a nice, beautiful arch here, which is beautiful on the hands if you're trying to push into something as you're cutting. But it's a really nice little touch. And everything is chamfered absolutely perfectly, which is nice. But it goes beyond that. This part is flat, this part is rounded. It's very easy to kind of round off that transition, to just kind of do something a little iffy and non-committal. But check this out. As the flat part intersects with the round part, they keep the curve of the round part. And so you end up with this shape where it wraps over perfectly and the round comes a little bit further in. It's just stellar. So it is perfectly flat until it is no longer flat, at which point it is the same roundness ever. That takes effort. That takes serious machining. And I'm really, really impressed by that little detail. Speaking of little details on the blade, although the bottom part here is polished such that the lock bar will engage with it, this part is still mirror stonewashed. So even the bottom part of the blade that will never really show unless you're looking at it carefully is polished. And, well, at least it's stonewashed and then polished, which is a beautiful thing. It's what they're doing right when nobody's looking, which is good. The thumb jimping is beautiful because you can see that there is actually a little bit of separate chamfering on the thumb. It's not the case that the flat comes right up to the edge of the dimples here, of the jimping, that is. In fact, there's another separate angle here going up onto the thumb jimping, which means that you get a lot of texture, but it's not sharp. It's not cutting into your finger at all. That is a really great detail that they have done really well there, and that I respect the heck out of. Another thing to just bring me joy, the full flat grind here ends at the exact point that the jimping starts. Here, I'll try and show it from another angle. There you go. Full flat grind, start of the jimping. That's a really good detail, and it just brings me joy to look at. And of course, it's got a sharpening choil, which I appreciate always as a sharpener. Let's look at the handles now for some detail. So on the handles, everything is, again, done really well. The inner edge of the titanium is chamfered, so this isn't sharp either. There is nothing on this knife that is sharp except the damn blade, which is a beautiful thing. When it's closed, the contouring across the knife, so it's easy to see that the handles themselves are rounded. There's a contour here. But that contour is actually kept constant. It is a smooth curve when the knife is closed and the lock bar is engaged. So they actually did the contouring with a blade shape in there so that the contouring would be correct. Oh my God, is that a good detail? I love it. The lock bar milling is a nice little artistic touch here. They've pulled it out. And, you know, it matches everything else. They've done really, really well there. On your lock bar itself, if we open the knife, you can see that there is a thumb divot on the one side of the handle to allow your thumb to get in there, but there's also a beautiful little divot here on the lock bar side, which gives you enough purchase, basically, to open the lock bar, but makes it so it doesn't hurt your damn thumb while you're doing so. Spectacular little detail. Also worth noting that the divot on the other side is perfectly centered with the spidey hole, within the spidey hole, when the knife is closed. Again, it's not important, but it's a great detail, and it shows that somebody gave a damn. And so as a technical piece, this brings me a lot of joy. Similarly, the lock bar cuts the spidey hole exactly in half. Wow. I have trouble believing that that was an accident. And if it wasn't an accident, that's a stellar little retentive detail move that brings me joy. And then also note that when the knife is closed, the blade is absolutely flush with the finger guard, so there's just one line in silhouette here on the top of the knife. Just a little nice detail. Brings me joy. let's talk about the backspacer a little bit. The backspacer, you can see here. I'm hoping you can see here. There we go. You can see little tiny bits of the jimping, but just barely above. So, in fact, the bottom of the jimping is precisely at the height of the titanium scale. So the jimps stick up exactly over the titanium, but you can't really see any of the plastic in between them. Again, it's just a little show of precision that brings me some joy. Also, look at the fade-off for the backspacer. You can see here there's a little bit of plastic where the jimping ends, and then it dives into the titanium in a very seamless way. It's flat, 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 and then here you go. So the top line of the knife is perfectly flat, and then your backspacer appears. Just a nicely done little job there. Brings me joy. And then also notice that there is absolutely no gap between the backspacer and the titanium. That's not as hard to do, but it's still another sign that they gave a damn as they were making the backspacer and the titanium. The action on this knife is very, very nice as well. It's running on washers. Hopefully you can see that. Yeah, you can see the 2 washers in there. But it's absolutely smooth. This is as smooth as any Sebenza I've handled, as smooth as my Umnumzan. And as it breaks in, it gets smoother. But it's not a really effortful action in that you can still use your thumb to flick the knife open. So it's absolutely stellar in that way. The detent is just dialed in perfectly for this to be a pop-open sort of thumb knife. The lock-up sound is something I've talked about before, and I don't know that it'll translate well over the microphone, but listen. It just locks up solid like a bank vault, and you hear it. It's just nice. That sound is one of the very best sounds in the knife world. And that's a really weird statement, but I'm insane. You know that. That's why you're watching the channel. Deal with it. So that's nice. And the lock bar tension on this is really nicely dialed in that it's strong enough that I feel like it's secure, but it's also not a force. You're not really trying to push that lock bar over. It's easy enough that it's easy, but it's hard enough that you're not going to mistakenly do it. So that's just another stellar thing. The action on this is done beautifully well. And then there are some other miscellaneous beauties in here as well. The cut for the spider on the Spyderco thing, I'm hoping this is visible. But you can see here, it's actually milled in there. You can see the point in the middle of the spider, underneath the spider's nose, which is hollow, by the way, where all of the milling lines meet. And it's just dead center. It's just nice. It's not lasered, it's milled. It's cut beautifully. And then separately etched. I love that so much. So that's good. The clip does not rest on the lock bar, which is always a nice thing, which means no matter how you're opening or closing it, if you've got your fingers on the clip, you're not going to be putting more pressure on the lock bar than you need to. I love the Marsan Slysz Maker's Mark. It's one of the more beautiful Maker's Marks out there. I put it in line with Brad Southard's, which I also really, really appreciate. And Chiragorov isn't that either. But I like that a lot, too. The cutout for the lanyard hole is another area that I just find joy in. I don't know if you're going to be able to see this, but it is just a tube. Even though it goes through one scale, the backspacer, and then another scale, if you look through it very closely, I don't know that you're going to be able to see this, it is perfectly smooth in there. Which, again, is just a feat of tolerances in manufacturing. So this is just a stellar knife on the details. There are a couple of little tiny demerits. I'm not a big fan of this little hook at the end of the backspacer. I don't know how they could have done it better, but I'm not a massive fan of it. It's a little catchy. And, that's really, honestly, it. This is a really beautifully designed knife, and so that's why I gush about the Slysz Bowie. Not because it's a really flashy knife, like some of your flippers, or that it's a super unique or, art knife sort of thing, like your tie lock. This is a knife that is really spectacularly made and designed. Every part of this knife was thought about beautifully before it was done, and then executed perfectly. And so, if Spyderco never did anything else, I would respect the hell out of them for this alone. This is a stellar effort, and this is in line with most of the Midtechs out there in the world. Most of your custom-designed sorts of knives, in terms of quality and just overall perfection. So that's why I love the Slysz Bowie, and that's why I think you probably will too, if you're a detail kind of oriented guy. If you were listening to the things I was saying and going, oh my god, the Spidey hole is centered, that's incredible. buy a Slysz Bowie. You will love it forever. It may not be the flashiest thing, it may not be the artiest thing, but it's a really solid cutting tool, and it's done so damn well that you're just going to be in love. So there you go. My little love note to the Slysz Bowie here. And I hope this has been interesting for you. And have yourselves an absolutely wonderful rest of the day. And if you can, pick up a Slysz Bowie. You won't regret it.